Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to, you can actually respond back to me. I'm so excited to have an audience. You are six, but you feel like 600 to me because I have not had an audience since February. So thank you. I'm so honored to Benoit for contacting me to have me come back to Orlando. Again, it's such an honor. I'm going to talk about a myriad of things today. First, obviously, jazz. Being a jazz drummer, I'm going to talk about that. Also talk about music and the power of interaction, which I think is really interesting given where we are right now, how we're really fighting for that right to still interact and the interplay of being a jazz musician and really what makes the world go round. Then I will also talk about my brush book, which just came out a few months ago. I also have some wonderful guests here that are studying at UCF and really talented musicians. And last, I am here with Daphné Mia Essiet, who is an incredible artist, visual artist. These are her some of her work, and also an incredible poet and writer. And so we are actually going to have a really cool concert tomorrow night here that we're recording for broadcast for next week at Timucua. And so I'm going to have her towards the end come up and read one of her poems. But before we do all that, I don't want to do too much talking. I just want to play because, one, I have not played, and I think exactly my last gig was February 28th. And that was at Duke University. I was doing a masterclass there. So now we are in September. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. I'm going to play something. I don't know what I'm going to play because I like to keep it organic and see what music wants me to play and wants me to say. So hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you. So, a couple of things I want to talk about. First, as it pertains to the drum set and being a jazz drummer, one of the first and most primarily important things I would say would be I am supposed to be a timekeeper. As a drummer in jazz and really in any art form, the first thing that we should always serve is the music. And so there's a couple different ways that we are supposed to connect musically in jazz. As a drummer, it's my job to connect with the bass player. The bass player is going to be walking bass lines or playing syncopated rhythms. After that, the pianist is going to be playing different rhythms, comping rhythms, and then you will have some horn players who you will see in a few minutes will be playing melodies and soloing, and then all of that comes together and kind of creates a really beautiful course of music. As Benoit said, I'm sort of taking you behind the scenes and telling you how the food is made. Well, that's essentially what makes us come together. But what really sort of separates the masters from those that are young and trying to figure this music out is their interpretation of how they do things. So you have some great drummers like Elvin Jones, who his birthday was yesterday, one of the great jazz drummers of all time. The way he used to play time was quite different than, say, Philly Joe Jones or Joe Morello or Tony Williams. You have great bass players like Ray Brown or Oscar Pettiford or, Milt Hinton. Again, all of those guys are from so many different generations. And then you have great pianists like Herbie Hancock and Mary Lou Williams and, Sonny Clark and, the list can go on and on, Ray Bryant. But the goal is that we come together as a rhythm section and we support the horn players. And to me, one of the things that makes jazz really special is that connectivity. Is once we are all fulfilling our roles in this music, then we connect with each other, and then that's when the magic comes in. And so it's not just merely us sort of keeping our roles together, but it's how we keep and play our roles, and then how do we figure out how, in terms of feeding off of each other. And a key that makes that connectivity possible is the ability to listen. And that is something that is almost becoming a lost art between musicians, particularly right now, because, when you get on a Zoom call or you get on a Facebook chat or on a StreamYard, website, you're just playing. So you're just sending information out. Well, the thing about sending information out is that only makes you focus as a musician on what you're doing. When you're sending it out, you're only thinking about, man, how can I play it? What is my volume? What are the licks that I know? What are the changes I know? It's very eye-centric, right? Versus when you think about being on a stage, it's very much team-centric because I have this lick or I have this thing, but the bass player is developing this walking line, so I can't play this unless it matches up with that bass player, or vice versa with drummers and horn players or whatever. So to me, as we're transitioning from sort of where we are now with this streaming creation process back to the bandstand, we cannot lose the ability to listen, because listening is what informs us and what we choose to play and what we choose to give to the world. So jazz music is really important to me, and I chose to be a jazz musician because I feel like there's no other way to express yourself like a jazz musician. Rock musicians are great, classical musicians are great, musicians from other, diasporas and even, world music is amazing. But to me, jazz is the combination of all of that together. When you are a jazz musician, you are an ambassador, and you're able to really understand how to play the tradition of the music and improvise, which is really, really special. So that's why I love to play jazz. I've been playing drums since I was 2 years old. I didn't start playing jazz until I was 16. I pretty much grew up playing in the Black gospel church, playing gospel music. And I met a guy named John Riley, who's a really amazing drummer. And John said to me, he said, Ulysses, you have a lot of talent. He said, but if you want to be a jazz drummer, you need to really do your homework. You sound good, but you don't sound like you've listened to jazz. And that's why I always go back to, if you want to really become a great artist, you have to listen to what you want to be great at. Because to me, these masters that have left their footprint in this music, in my opinion, they have left such a long lineage of things that, if there's no more new jazz recordings made tomorrow, God forbid, there's so much great information out there. And if you really want to be a master, you got to learn what they've done. And, like they say, if you want to talk like a duck, you got to listen to a duck talk, right? So there's a lot of great masters out there playing. So I love this music, and I love playing jazz, and I come out of sort of the traditional sort of standpoint of playing jazz, back to, early New Orleans music, late 1800s, and then evolving through, obviously the 20s, 30s, bebop era. And then now just still trying to figure out how to press on and do some new things. So that's kind of my vantage point of the music. And I would say some of the basic core principles of my playing and what I believe every jazz drummer should focus on is, as I said, first, playing really good time. So that means learning how to play time with a metronome. The second thing would be technique, dealing with the hands, so rudiments, really making sure you understand the 28 essential rudiments as a drummer. Third, I would say, and again, not necessarily in this order, making sure that you are transcribing and listening to all of the great jazz masters. You cannot, in my opinion, call yourself a jazz drummer if you have not studied the canon of about 70, 80 years of great drummers. To me, which would begin, again, with the early 1900s, really up till probably about the late 1970s in terms of like the real kind of core of the drummers that it really gave us the language that we're playing. But in the 80s, you had an emergence of so many other amazing drummers, and then the 90s and then the 2000s, my generation and peer group. So it's a lot of music to study. So I would say that's kind of the third piece. And then fourth, I would say, sort of reiterating, is, again, the connectivity. As a drummer, we have to be the smartest person on the bandstand, or at least attempt to be, because we've got to understand our part. We got to understand what the bass is doing, what the piano's doing, what the horn's doing, and then we got to play things to set everybody else up. So the drummer is probably the most responsible person on the bandstand, because we've got to have a vantage point that nobody else gets to have. As a horn player, they get to stand there and just focus on melody, and they get to think about soloing. As a pianist, they get to, focus on comping rhythms and then soloing. Bass players get to focus on the root movement and then soloing. Drummers, we don't get to solo. Very rarely, unless it's now and it's my show and I get to solo. Otherwise, if my name is not on the bill, there's no soloing for me. So it really makes us have to have a level of responsibility. And then I think the last thing is, sort of the fifth point of my philosophy of playing is you must put your truth and your soul into your music. For me, this is a spiritual experience, right? It's a spiritual experience in a very sort of, natural environment. So yes, you got to listen to the records and all that practical and pedagogical stuff, right? But then when we get on the bandstand, I throw all of that out the window and I connect spirit to spirit with who is on the bandstand and with who is out in the audience, which is what makes this pandemic so difficult because jazz is a spiritual art form. And so to be able to communicate spirit to spirit and try to transcend your spiritual experience of your instrument through a computer screen, which is non-spiritual, is very, very difficult, So I think for me and for those that are watching this, streaming event, really make sure that you tap into the spiritual core of who you are, because I heard Steve Teray say to me a long time ago, he said, Ulysses, who you are as a person is who you will become as an artist. Who your artistry is reflects who you are. So I think many times we get caught up in these method books and these, this sort of very, again, pedagogical perspective, but you ultimately got to send your spirit through your art. And that is what moves people. That is what we respond to when we hear John Coltrane. That is what we respond to when we hear Charlie Parker, when we hear Billie Holiday, when we hear Sarah Vaughan and Rosa Passos and so many different musicians. We are responding to their spirit through their art. So we must always make sure that we make that connection. So now what I want to do is get some really great musicians up here to play with me. I want to bring up this really talented tenor player, and because sometimes I am great with faces, but I'm not good with names, please give me your full name. Brian Devlin. No, just R. Oh, Ryan. Sounds like it's the face mask. Yeah. Ryan Devlin. So he is at UCF from what I just heard earlier, and he's got a big, beautiful, juicy tone, which I'm digging on, that I heard earlier. And we're going to play a tune by Sonny called Pent-Up House. And it's one of my favorite tunes to play. I've been playing this tune for probably 15, 20 years. So we don't know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but we're going to have fun and go on sort of an exploration. So I hope you dig it. Cool, cool. I'll bring you back up, Ryan. Give it up for Ryan Devlin again. That was killing. Man, he just fully embodied all the things that I was talking about with the listening. It's really beautiful to play with someone who's really interactive. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about an art form in drums, which will lead to the next person that I will bring up to play with me, and something called the brushes, which are these things here. And I first started playing the brushes when I was about 16 years old, and I actually am really fortunate to have a book that I just, I wrote it a year ago. The book just came out in April, and it's called The Jazz Brushes for the Modern Drummer, an Essential Guide to the Art of Keeping Time. And I'm so honored that this book has been published by Hal Leonard. And so, in my opinion, it is probably the first book of its kind to really have a true historical account of the brushes. And it's important to jazz. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about with the brushes was how it is important to be a timekeeper as a drummer with the brushes, because many times what people do with the brushes is they play them and they focus so much on soloing and they don't take enough time to, again, move the ensemble forward. And so in this book, I took, I think I've been writing the book my whole life, but I particularly started writing this book, and I did it in about 3 months. And it goes from the early 1900s all the way up to current times, and it's a 3-part book. The book mostly, as I said, focuses on a lot of historical accounts of other brush players that have influenced my life and my playing. Then it deals with sort of the manufacturing side of the brushes. Then after that, it deals with just some music that you can play along with. And then I have a playlist of over 100 drummers from back to the 1920s to my colleagues today that are playing really beautiful brushes. Then there's a video aspect of it where you get to see me demonstrate things. And then there is also some transcriptions as well. And I wanted it to be a tool that really gave people an insight into great players that really are very much forgotten about. So the brushes have kind of become something in recent years that people have kind of known me for, which is interesting because I never thought that that would happen. I mean, with guys still walking around like Lewis Nash and Kenny Washington and Jeff Hamilton and Peter Erskine and Joey Barron and Greg Hutchison, I would never dream that my name would be associated with being able to play the brushes well, with these guys still living and breathing, but I'm honored to have my name next to theirs. So the next piece I want to play for you is a bebop tune, and I'm going to play some brushes on it. And the cool thing about the brushes is that they're used to really get around the drums in a very beautiful and creative way, in a soft way. And the first sort of brush player goes all the way back to Louis Armstrong's early years, because at that time, we did not have microphones to record. During that time, you were recording everything through a phonograph. And so basically what happened as they were recording through a phonograph, when you would hit a drum, it would completely distort everything. So a lot of the early jazz recordings don't have drums simply because the drums would distort the recording. Well, brushes, which you see now, are this really hip thing with rubber, like a rubber sleeve and, nice metal wires. I mean, it's a whole thing. And that was actually that patent was sealed by, or created and sealed by Joe Collado. But before, it was actually fly swatters. So fly swatters used to be something that was very small like this. And, when you see a fly, you would end its destiny, so to speak. Well, some drummers were trying to figure out how do you play into this phonograph and not distort it. Well, somebody came up with the idea of using these fly swatters, and that was how brushes were born. Now, fast forward many, many, many years later, we have some hip brushes. So anyway, with that said, I want to play a tune by the great Charlie Parker called Donna Lee. And just like I met Ryan earlier today, I was introduced to, please give me your name again. Shawn. Villanueva, man, beautiful last name. So Shawn Wait, you got it. I can't. It just sounds like woo.
Shawn Villanueva.
Oh, Villanueva. Cool. So please come up, Shawn, and play with me. You're also at UCF.
I actually went to FSU.
Oh, you went to FSU? Okay, so we have a UCF student and an FSU student. FSU has a great program. I actually studied with Leon Anderson. Yeah, Leon's who got me ready for New York. But yeah, we're going to make some music together. Again, we don't know how it's going to go, but we're going to have some fun, and hope you enjoy it.
Not crazy.
You started on me.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Man, these cats can play down here in Orlando. Got a vibe. Give it up for Shawn again. Man, I love that. It felt great. You all having a good time? Great. What an idea. Musicians in a room making music with real people. Isn't that a foreign concept? So I want to move forward to the next part of what I would love to share with you. A few months ago, or I have a confession to make, I'm addicted to Instagram. And and with that addiction, it means that I spend way too much time, and my screen hour time on my iPhone is very embarrassing, the amount of hours that I'm on the phone. But I still managed to be productive. But with that said, I was on Instagram one day, and an incredible musician who's a harpist posted this beautiful picture. Her name is Brandy Younger. Brandy Younger, if you get a chance, I always say she is the modern day Alice Coltrane. Alice Coltrane left this earth, but she reincarnated herself inside this amazing woman. And I think there's a picture of Brandy, or maybe I think it's up here. Yeah. So I was on Instagram, and I saw this picture of Brandy. And she said an artist friend of hers created this picture. So I was like, man, this picture is so gorgeous. So it's just beautiful. And I loved all the textures and all that. So I reached out to the artist, and I said, man, I would love for you to create something with me. And it was so cool because as I was talking to her via social media, I could understand that she was an authentic artist. She wasn't a person that was like, all right, great, here's what it cost, and I'll get right on it. She was like, well, I have some pricing structures, but I need to kind of figure out how we would vibe and what we would create. And it was very apparent that art is something that is incredibly organic to her. So I was like, you know what, let me kind of step back for a second. Let me figure out how I want to work with her. Because I said, this is not just someone who I'm going to get her to create something for me and put it on social media to get, some attention. Like, this is going to be a really substantive connection. So anyway, long story short, I went back and revisited that connection. And when I got the call to do this, my manager said, who do you want to work with? Because, Benoit wants you to come down, but he wants you to bring a collaborator. And I started thinking about, man, like, who has inspired me recently? Like, who is a person or a creator or creative that when I saw their work, it changed kind of how my blood flowed. And I remember looking at Daphne's pictures. So anyway, I said, I think I want to work with her. Then I found out she just created a book of poetry. And it's magnificent. I have it up here. I want to tell you about it because this poetry like really changed my life. So I talked to her about it, and she said, oh, she told me about the book, and maybe did I leave the book? Or maybe I'll borrow yours, Daphne, or maybe I have it up here. Oh, no, here it is. So anyway, so she says, yeah, we're going to create some art, and then she says, I have this book of poetry. And the book of poetry is called On Love and Lust and Everything in Between. So I was like, all right, I'll buy it. I want to support anyway. And then I'm a writer myself, and I love to read new books. I read through her poetry in about a day and a half. It was so incredible, and it felt like somebody was writing their life story, but through a lens that looked like mine. And it was just so honest and so beautiful. So anyway, she is here, and she's working with me. And so earlier today, we had a really great time. We're going to present something tomorrow with her work, her poetry, and my band that's coming up tomorrow. But I want to give you a little sample. So I'm going to ask Daphne to come up and read some of her work. And I'm going to invite up Shawn and Ryan, and we're going to have some fun. So Daphne's been asking me the whole time she's here. She's like, so what are we doing, Ulysses? What are we doing? And I'm like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. But I think we could pick something from what we did earlier. So please put your hands together for Miss Daphné Essiet. Oh, nice. Come on up.
Wait, I'm going to move my mask. I even put some makeup.
You're the man. You're hired.
So I'm not going to say anything from tomorrow.
Okay, sure.
How are you guys doing? Good? It's been a while. I haven't put makeup on since January. So, guys, I like you. This is The Buzz. And I'm going to read that because it was actually inspired while I was on a set and Brandy was playing. So you might not know that, but it's called The Buzz. When you drink? Yeah, I was drinking. Not that I drink all the time, but I drink sometimes. I tipped the glass to my lips, allowed the champagne to burn my tongue, then flow down my throat, liquid gold, I'm gone. I close my eyes and feel the hype, lose myself delicately, moment of harp sense. I close my eyes and I feel the hype, feel myself indubitably, stop the pretense. Though the bass is grounding me right there, my soul aloft quivers from the thrill. More champagne, please, all through the night. Fill my emptiness with tangible dreams. Fill those dreams with compassionate love. Fill that love with solid delight and gentle strokes. I'm a queen, baby. I bathe in warm milk and sleep in silk sheets. Eat almonds, dates, and honey. In the morning, I tip the glass to my lips, allow the champagne to burn my tongue, then flow down my throat. Liquid gold, I am home. That was the buzz. I think that was good.
So I want to just ask Daphne a couple questions to kind of invite you all into our process for those that haven't had a chance to be here earlier and for some that may not have a chance to be or check out the broadcast. But I want to ask you, how has it been writing all this poetry and now hearing some of it, underscored with music? How has that changed the poetry or any of that process? Maybe you want to share with them.
So it's the first time, I read my poetry with music. And I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Love Jones. That's how I encountered poetry for the first time. And I was back in the late 90s, right? And for me, that was amazing to see, the whole process. When I wrote the poetry, it wasn't supposed to be a book. It's later that, I decided to kind of take all my poems and make it as a book. But it's just I have to adapt the music. So it's me dancing, with the music. Obviously, we just did that on the fly. So we didn't practice this. I just picked one poem, and I think I really like it. I appreciate, to improvise, I guess. I'm one of the bandmate. I don't know how you say that. Yeah, so.
Great. And then I'll ask another question. How is it going back and forth between the medium of all these beautiful pieces that you created and writing? Is there a clear line, or do you feel there are things you can paint that you can't write, or things you can write that it's hard for you to paint and express yourself?
Well, for me, I just feel like I'm a vessel, right? So I feel something, I write it. Usually my feelings, I write. And visual things is more therapeutic for me. So I do a lot of, so I know you see a lot of figurative work here, but I do also a lot of abstract work. So that's very therapeutic. During the quarantine, I would paint 10 hours a day. I get up in the morning, I just paint. I'm excited to paint, I don't have like a goal, look, I'm gonna paint 200 pieces, but I probably did more than that. So that's, and I guess the poetry is also therapeutic, but it's more of an urge. You know, like something happens to you, I mean to me, and I have to write it down, you know, as a poem, as opposed to the visual is more like if I have anxiety or, I mean, during the quarantine, you know, everybody experienced a little bit of anxiety, you know, either you are sequestered with other people or you're by yourself, so you don't feel like you're free, you know, like this freedom that we're so privileged to have and we just didn't have anymore. So that was my outlet to design stuff. Yeah.
Can we give it up for Miss Daphne? Yes, thank you. Come on up, Shawn. I love two things that she said. She talked about the movie Love Jones. That is probably my favorite movie ever. I watch it at least 5 to 10 times a year. It was my introduction as well to jazz and poetry together. And also it was one of the first times that I saw a film that was made within my generation that had jazz in it. And I knew, like, I know a lot of those players, like the tenor player, Teodros Avery, and Carl Allen, the drummer, was in that movie. So that was really important. And then the other thing where she talked about poetry, the urge, you know, and that's the same for me. Like, I create music because I love, like, I can't live without music. It's very like just, it's like eating for me. But poetry for me is the same. Like, when I experience something really deeply, whether it's hurt or love or surprise or whatever, sometimes I don't have the words to say, so I have to write it. So it's really beautiful to hear that same process. Do we have any other writers? Anybody else write or anybody else paint? If so, try it. I mean, this pandemic, we got enough time to do everything. Literally learn a new instrument. I know there's a lot of new chefs now because of the pandemic. I feel like on Facebook it's like Food Network now. Everybody's posting, but not all food pictures are good pictures. Some things I'm like, you probably should have cooked that a little longer. But anyway, we're gonna play one more thing for you, and we have a new friend joining us. Please give me your full name. Charles Glazer, which I think he's somehow related to the man that runs this whole thing. But talented bass player. I'm already digging playing with him. And Benoit emailed me a few days ago. He's like, man, do you want to have people here? And I said, absolutely. Do you want to play with some musicians? I said, yes. So I'm really honored that we're able to have a jazz moment. Again, this is the first time I've been able to do this in a while. So I think we'll just play a blues, you know, and have some fun and feed off your energy. Before we do that, I did want to ask, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask about either some of the things I spoke about earlier or something Daphne may have said or our process?
Where can we find the book?
Oh, so the book. Thank you. The book, well, both books are available. I feel like I'm on a commercial on Amazon. So on Love and Lust and everything in between. Do you have some books here, Daphne? Okay. Okay. But it is. Okay. But I bought it off of Amazon. Great book. And then mine is also available on Amazon as well as howleonard.com. So you can get this easily. They're both on there. Daphne, do you have a website, right? Great.
I'll put all that stuff on the video.
Great. Great. So yeah. Any other questions? Cool. All right, well, we're gonna play for you.
Yay, everybody. Thank you to Ryan Devlin, of course, Charles Glazer, and Shawn Villanueva, and, of course, the one and only, the masterful and wonderful Ulysses Owens Jr.